Andrew Tate's the most famous man you've probably never heard of, but the chances are your children will have. Videos of Tate have been viewed billions of times online. He's built an enormous following of mostly young men, and his often scandalous views about women that have made him notorious across the world. Views like this.
So I think my sister is her husband's property, yes. When a bride is walking down the aisle to marry the groom, the father walks next to her and gives her away. True or false?
True. Religious conservative position, nothing new.
Tate's opinions on mental illness are equally controversial.
I don't believe in depression. Don't message me about depression because I don't believe in it. If you're asleep in your bed in the middle of the night and you hear a noise and you believe in ghosts, now you're afraid. But if you don't believe in ghosts, it's the wind and you go back to sleep. You give the ghosts power by believing in them.
That's also true. Before, historically, depression wasn't a problem when men were men. If you were depressed, you would just go out and work, right? So this is how it was. Even in Sufi Islam, you feel bad, you go out and work. I don't believe in depression. I believe in pain, suffering, and I think that they're intrinsic to human being. I believe that men need to be productive. When men are not productive, they tend to feel what you today call depressed. So I understand what Tate is saying, and I agree with him.
Well, this summer, every major social media platform banned Tate amid a global backlash and concerns about his influence on the young people who watch him. But copies of his videos are still shared millions of times every day. This show is called Uncensored. One of the challenges views directly, so he flew from Romania to sit here in this studio, and the full explosive interview airs later this week. Here's a bit of what's to come. Do you respect women?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't I?
Do you think that 18, 19-year-old women are more attractive than 25-year-old women?
I think there's attractive people. That's a loaded question.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, it's not really, is it?
I can't.
You know why I'm asking it?
Of course I do, but I can't sit
Well,
here and
for
say.
the benefit of viewers who don't know why I'm asking, you said this. In general, this is also one of the reasons men find youth attractive. You want to blow up the internet? I'll blow up the internet right effing now. The reason 18 and 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25-year-olds is because they've been through less dick. People say, oh, you can't say that.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Mr. Tate has a right to freedom of speech like everyone else. Although there are some people who have a little bit of, let's say, colonial attitude and semi-racist attitudes who do not want to let him have the freedom of speech like everyone else because he's black or a man of color, let's be real. But Tate is just putting a religiously conservative position. Fornication is forbidden in Bible. Fornication is forbidden in Quran. This virginity, purity of a woman, this is a traditional conservative value. It's nothing new that Tate is presenting. But somehow Mr. Tate has less right to present his conservative views because some people feel that people of color should not have those kinds of views, which I find funny, and this is also something Tate has mentioned with his absolute, total, instant banning and cancelling.
Yes, I can. A 19-year-old is more attractive than a 26-year-old woman, and I'll tell you why. Because that 26-year-old has talked to more guys, been to the club more times, been effed and dumped more times, more arguments, more mess, more for me to clean up. That is misogyny.
No.
Right? Because you are encouraging a mindset about 25-year-old women that makes them sound out to be infinitely less desirable than 18, 19.
No, that's not what he's doing at all. You're straw manning Piers Morgan. If you want to understand what Tate is trying to say, he's trying to say that he's trying to promote purity, religious purity, moral purity among women. What kind of society do we have where we celebrate women who behave trashy and immorally? Tate is trying to present a more religiously conservative view to promote purity, religious purity, basically. So that's what he's trying to say. What Piers Morgan is trying to say, I don't know if it's the people behind Piers Morgan's show or himself trying to do this. He's trying to paint it like Tate is anti-women, which is bullshit. The people who want women to sleep around and behave immorally, they are the ones who are anti-women.
Year-olds, and having effectively been having too much sex to be taken in a more respectful way.
That would, well, firstly, even if that was the case, that wouldn't be misogyny.
Well, what did you mean by what you said?
That's not misogyny because it's not anti-women. I'm saying that an 18 or a 19-year-old woman would be more desirable.
Pretty anti-25-year-old woman.
Anti-25-year-old women we can argue, but not misogyny.
Well, that's misogyny then, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Well, being anti any woman at all is misogyny.
Not when I'm saying that women are beautiful and attractive at a certain age and saying the age.
You're saying 18, 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25.
Well, than ageist perhaps, but misogynistic absolutely
Is that
not.
when but you just accepted it was misogyny?
No, I didn't. You said it was misogyny. I'm telling you, no, it's not.
But if a 26-year-old woman is watching this and has heard those comments,
Yeah.
I think that Piers Morgan sucks in this interview, and he does nothing but straw man arguments. I think he's very generous, a little bit too generous than he should be as a conservative, if he calls himself conservative, with his silly and funny straw man arguments, because what Piers Morgan is trying to shove into Tate's mouth is not what Tate is saying at all.
would you just say to her, look, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that?
No, I won't. I will say that I am sorry that offends you. However, there's a large contingent of the world.
That doesn't mean you're sorry.
No, I'm not sorry.
Why should he
That's the
be?
point I'm making. I'm sorry if that offends you. However, there's a large contingent of the world that believe that, and I was mediating for a conversation.
Parts of the world that believe that about 26-year-old women are
Yeah.
parts of the world where women are not allowed out on their own.
That's your.
Oh, come on now. You honestly think that women are the freest in the West? Do Western colonial men really respect women? You see, colonial men, and I see these post-colonial attitudes with Piers Morgan, a Brit. Let me not remind you what British people have done in Africa and the Middle East and India, all right? They tend to point to other people to be misogynistic, why they like to watch women in short skirts. These colonial Western men like to point to other nations that have moral decency, values among women, but they themselves like to watch half-naked women. I bet you that Piers Morgan is, if you dig deep, he is probably guilty of some Me Too stuff himself. So, yeah.
That's a
They
conversation.
have to wear full burqas.
Well, that's a conversation
They're not
to have.
allowed to drive cars.
That's nothing to do with
But
it.
is that the kind of world for women that you...
I was mediating a conversation.
No, I'm asking you what you think.
I don't live in a country where that happens.
You're using that as the excuse for why you're not sorry for saying it.
It's not an
Is that there are
excuse.
parts of the world where this is fine?
My
So
friend.
my question to you is, well, do you think it's fine?
I don't think it's fine. I live in a world where
You don't think it's fine?
the reason
This
I
isn't that hard, Andrew. You can simply say, Piers, you know what?
No, it's not hard. Piers, you're pointing to other cultures and telling basically that they are uncivilized when it comes to women. But everyone knows how white men like Piers Morgan views women and treats women at his workplace. So you are not fooling anybody by trying to point to those other cultures making straw man arguments, which is not what Andrew Tate is saying at all. You are straw manning and involving Islam, which is something Piers Morgan does not understand, to try to paint Andrew Tate as a misogynist. So I cannot see this conversation in any other way than Andrew Tate is obviously attractive to women, and Piers Morgan feels like his manhood is threatened when this guy, Andrew Tate, is very attractive to women, blew up in the internet, and Piers Morgan is less attractive to women. So I see this as a competition of the dicks, basically. Sorry, my language, but that's how I see it. It's jealousy. Yeah,
With the
jealous.
benefit of hindsight, I wish I hadn't said it like that. And if a 26-year-old woman's watching, I'm sorry I said that, because that actually is blatantly misogynist. And even though that's a view held
You
by
are the
other parts of
misogynist,
the world,
Piers.
it's not a view I share. Now, I would respect you more if you said that than if you try and say, well, it's said in other parts of the world, so I'm not sorry.
I think
That doesn't tell me what you think.
Then you need to understand why my content existed in the first place. My content existed because I tried my very hardest to be an absolute and utter realist, especially with uncomfortable truths. I was pointing out that very uncomfortable.
Is that a truth, then?
It's an uncomfortable truth in many parts of the world. It's not a truth that I'm happy about.
An inquest this week found that a 14-year-old girl, Molly Russell, died from an act of self-harm while suffering
come on,
from
man.
depression and the negative effects of online content. The coroner
This has nothing to do with Tate. Piers Morgan is way off doing the funniest, most ridiculous, a little bit actually racist, straw man arguments against Tate.
said she was exposed to material that may have influenced her in a negative way, and in addition, what started as depression had become a much more serious depressive illness, and she very sadly took her life.
That's absolutely disgusting.
Right. Her father.
It's terrible.
Her father's campaign for better protections against potentially dangerous social media algorithms, right? It says that the particularly graphic content she saw romanticized acts of self-harm, normalized her condition, and focused on a limited and irrational view without any counterbalance of normality.
What has that to do with Andrew Tate? Absolutely nothing. What an ugly attitude Piers Morgan has in this interview.
First of all, what is your response to that? Nothing to do with you. I'll see what your response
that's the
is.
first thing.
It has nothing to do with him. So why do you bring it up then? Because he's a black man and your audience have prejudice against black men, and now you're accusing him so he's guilty somehow. Get the fuck out of here, Piers. You're appealing to the prejudice towards men of color of your audience. Piers Morgan is appealing to the prejudice towards men of color in the audience when he brings something like that up. Andrew Tate has nothing to do with that. Nothing.
Graphic content she saw romanticized acts of self-harm, normalized her condition, and focused on a limited and irrational view without any counterbalance of normality. First of all, what is your response to that? Nothing to do with you.
First of all, what's your response to that? It has nothing to do with you. Well, why do you bring it up then? Because you are painting this fair picture of black men into your audience. Get the fuck out of here, Piers Morgan. You sucked in this interview, Piers Morgan. You can do way better than this.
I'll see what your response
That's the first thing. Yeah, it is nothing to do with me. The fact that a 14-year-old girl took her life is truly sad. The world we live in today is... The fact that something like that happened is almost mind-blowing to me. That's truly sad. I actually feel sad inside to see something like that.
What has come clear to me in the interview is that a lot of things you say you wouldn't say now that you've said before.
So I'd say them differently, perhaps.
Yeah, right. So to me, that's an acceptance. Not just that you want to get back on platforms, because maybe that was one of the reasons you...
Oh, he wants to get back. Are you jealous, Piers? Are you jealous, Piers? Are you jealous, Piers Morgan? Do you feel that Tate is more of a man than you are? The truth is starting to come out.
Not just that you want to get back on platforms, because maybe that was one of the reasons you were no platform.
There you go.
But that you've recognized and understood the potential harm to the wrong kind of impressionable mind
River.
by some of the things you've said. Would that be fair?
I think that's 80% fair. I recognize and understand that with
I think that's 5% fair or 0% fair. But okay, let's say 80% for the benefit of the doubt.
Would that be fair?
I think that's 80% fair. I recognize and understand that with massive fame, you have to be more careful about being misconstrued.
Absolutely.
Like I said earlier, 1% of people misunderstanding you doesn't matter with a small audience. It matters with a very large audience. With power comes responsibility.
Yes, it's true, Tate. And we can say things, we can fuck up, we can reword it and say that I should have formulated myself differently. But Mr. Tate, you have the same right to fuck up like everyone else. You have the same right to fuck up like everyone else. That's all I have to say. You have the same freedom of speech like everyone else. Don't think that you have less, and people who watch this don't think that just because you're a man of color, you have less right to speak your mind. White people all the time speak their mind. Well, nowadays they get canceled like Alex Jones and so on. That's bullshit. That's wrong. But you do have the same right to express yourself like everyone else.
I still believe the things I say. I do not want to be a negative force for the world. I also understand that I am a man who's lived a very difficult, nuanced life, and I am capable of making nuanced points that may be misunderstood by teenagers. However, that can be said about anybody and everything. Every opinion online can be misunderstood by children. Trying to protect children from the internet is a very interesting subject in and of itself, because I would argue that 80% of the content on the internet can be negative or detrimental to a young mind that doesn't understand the world.
I think Piers Morgan is jealous at Andrew Tate. I feel that Piers Morgan feels inferior to Tate, and then he tries to paint Tate like a misogynist. Now, I appreciate that Piers Morgan took Tate to the show. He didn't need to do that. Well, he gets a lot of views for doing so, so of course he does. I don't know if Piers Morgan is pressured by others to be this extremely unfair towards Tate and only do straw man arguments. I don't know that. Maybe, maybe not. But I do believe in freedom of speech, and I don't believe for 1 second anywhere in my body that Andrew Tate is against women. I think that the people who pretend to be friends of women but like to dress them off in short skirts, sexify them, and promote an immoral life, those people are the real anti-women. Hopefully this was interesting. What do you think? Leave comments below.